Hello, all my joyful creators and Call the Midwife friends. This is Cynthia with Cynthia's Joyful Creations, and welcome to Funday Monday, Call the Midwife, Blocks of Love, Baby Blanket, Part 1. So the items that you're going to need for this project, you will need 4 different colors of yarn, and all 4 colors will be used as main colors. Now, the 3 colors that I have chosen to represent the midwife pattern in this blanket, I have chosen this Lion Brand Pound of Love, and it is in the colorway Pastel Blue. And this is a 16-ounce skein, which has approximately 1,020 yards on it. And it is a medium 4-weight yarn. This is going to represent the Midwife Classic pattern. Okay, because all of this blanket will be done in a combination of granny squares. And so the classic midwife pattern will be done in this baby blue. Then I will be doing in the classic midwife butterfly pattern. In that granny square, I will be using this Red Heart Super Saver. It is a 7-ounce skein. It has 198 grams and 364 yards. It is also a medium 4-weight yarn, and it is in the colorway Pale Yellow. For the dragonfly pattern, for that square, I will be using Red Heart Super Saver. It's also a 7-ounce skein, 364 yards. It is also a medium 4-weight, and it is in the color Soft Navy. All right. Then we will have another block that will be part of our granny squares, and it will be a square with a puff stitch raised heart. That is what we will be working on today. And the yarn that I'm going to use for that square is white. I will also be using white to border all my other squares for sewing the blocks together. So let's push our yarn out the way. And this yarn, the white yarn that I am using is Studio Classic by Nicole. It is also a medium 4-weight yarn. And this particular skein is 14.1 ounces, 744 yards, and all of the yarn that I'm using is 100% acrylic. The other items that you will need, as you saw in the introduction, you will need a 5.0 millimeter hook, also known as an H hook. You will need a darning needle and some stitch markers, and a pair of scissors, and always lotion to moisturize and hydrate your hands, which are your best tool. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this video, and I'm going to get the craft table cleared off. The yarn that you will need today will be the yarn that you are going to create the puffed heart stitch with. You can choose to pick a color for this and then another color to put around the border of all of your squares, giving you a total of 5 colors. But I am going to use the white for this, and I'm actually going to show you, I have a piece worked up, what this project is going to look like. So here is our white blocks with that puff stitch, and here is the classic midwife stitch. Here is that butterfly stitch, and here is the dragonfly stitch, And then we will end with another one of our puffed heart squares on the end. And this is what we're going to make today. So I'm going to go ahead and clear off my craft table and we'll get started. If you're ready, let's go ahead and get started. I've already created a slip knot onto my hook. Remember, this loop does not count as part of your foundation chain or any stitch throughout the project. We need to create a foundation chain of 20. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. We are going to start by working a single crochet in the second chain from the hook. So here's our first one, here's our second one. So we're going to put our single crochet right into this stitch. So we're going to insert our hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, and pull through both loops. And we're going to work a single crochet into the next stitch, and we are going to work single crochets into each stitch across. So go ahead and let's work a single crochet into each of these stitches. When you get down to the end, you will have a total of 19 single crochets. And we're getting to the end here. And this is our last single crochet. I'm just going to tighten that tail. And so that gives us a total of 19 single crochets. You're going to chain 1, turn your work, and you're going to work 5 more rows of single crochets. When you get to the end of the row, you're going to chain 1 and turn your work and continue working your rows of single crochet until you have a total of 6 rows. We've already completed a row, so you'll need a total of 5 more rows added on. When you have your single rows, your 6 single rows of single crochet, we're going to cut that out. When you have your 6 rows of single crochet, we will meet back up. When you've completed the 6th row and you've chained 1 and turned your work, you're ready to start the 7th row. This is going to start creating the puff stitch heart or bobble stitch heart. We're going to work a single crochet into the first 9 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. In this 10th stitch, we're going to create a bobble stitch. to create a bobble stitch, you're going to wrap the yarn around your hook, insert it into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. You now have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops, and that leaves 2 loops on your hook. We will do this a total of 4 times so that when we're done we have a total of 5 loops on our hook. We've done this once, so let's do it a second time. Yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. You have 4 loops on the hook. Yarn over, pull through the first 2. That leaves you 3 loops on the hook. Let's do it for a third time. Yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. You now have 5 loops on the hook. Separate those 2 so you can see 5. You're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2, and that now leaves you 4 loops on the hook. We're going to do it for a fourth and final time. Yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. You now have 6 loops on the hook. And you can see these 2 when they're separated. Yarn over, pull through the first 2, and now that leaves you 5 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through all 5 of those loops, and then you're going to yarn over and chain 1 to secure that bobble stitch. And then you're going to come to the next stitch, which would be your 11th stitch, and you're going to work a single crochet. And on this side you work 9 single crochets, and you're going to work 9 single crochets on this side. So we've already done 1, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. After that last single crochet, you're going to chain 1, turn your work, and we're ready to begin row 8. On row 8, we're just going to single crochet all the way across, but I'm going to work it with you so that you can see how we work that single crochet into this bobble stitch. So let's go ahead and do 1, 2, and again you should have 19 stitches across when you're done. 3, 4, 5, and that bobble should be number 10. 6, 7, 8, and your 9th one is this little space right here on this side of the bobble. You can see it peeking out there. So this is 9. Excuse me. On your bobble stitch, if you'll turn it, you can see your little V that the stitches form. You can see your V on that bobble stitch. Okay. Now don't confuse this one right here. Okay. That's part of creating these stitches, the bobble, the double crochets, the first portion of the double crochets you were doing to create the bobble. You want to go to the one that's directly over the bobble. So when you turn it, you want the one that's directly over the bobble, like that. And you'll work a single crochet in that, and that's 10. And then going on, just like you did on the other side of the bobble, you're going to catch this one that's right here to the side of the bobble, and that is 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Now, during the time that we are creating the Bobble Stitch Heart, every other row will be single crochet like we just finished. I will always leave you to finish that on your own, but I wanted to do that one row with you so you could see how we work that single crochet in the top of that bobble. So we're at the end of the row. We're going to chain 1, turn our work, and we're going to get ready for row 9, and this will be the second row of our bobble stitches. So we're going to work a single crochet into the first 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now we're going to work a bobble. I'm going to work that with you slowly one more time. So you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, 2 loops on the hook. Yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, 4 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through the first 2, 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. You now have 5 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through the first 2, and you have 4 left. Yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. You have 6 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through the first 2, and you have 5 loops on the hook. That is where we're going to stop. You always want to do that half the first part of a double crochet to create your bobble 4 times, leaving you with 5 loops on the hook. Once you have your 5 loops on the hook, you're going to yarn over, pull through all 5, yarn over, and chain 1 to secure that bobble. We're now going to work 3 single crochets, so we're going to come into this next stitch because this is where we created our bobble. So in this next stitch right here, we're going to work a single crochet, and when we do that, it automatically pulls that stitch behind the bobble and it forces the bobble to stand out like this. And I'll show it to you better when we finish this row. So we've done 1 single crochet. We're going to do that 2 more times to give us a total of 3 single crochets. So 2, 3. We're now going to work another bobble. And remember, we do it a total of 4 times, leaving us with 5 loops on the hook. And when you have those 5 loops, yarn over and pull through all 5, yarn over and chain 1 to secure it, and we're going to finish off our side to keep it even. So we're going to do 7 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Then you're going to chain 1. And for row 10, you're just going to work your single crochets across. So go ahead and work your single crochets all the way across. Remember that you're going to go into this V-stitch on top of the bobbles. Okay. When you get to the end of the row, chain 1, turn your work, and I will meet back up with you to begin row 11. When you finish with row 10, you should have 19 single crochets. Chain 1, turn your work, and now we're ready to begin row 11, which is going to work another set of bobbles in our project. So we're going to start with 5 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to work a bobble. After that bobble, we're going to do 7 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now we're going to work another bobble. I messed up. I apologize for that. And then we want to keep it even and symmetrical over here. So we did 5 single crochets to start. So we will do 5 single crochets to end. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that ends row 11. Go ahead and chain 1. Row 12, we're going to work single crochets across, but before we do, this is what our heart is starting to look like. So go ahead and pause the video and work your row of single crochets. When you get to the end of row 12, chain 1, turn your work, and I will meet back up with you to start row 13. We have completed row 12 of our single crochets across, chaining 1. We're going to turn our work, and now we're going to work another row that will have bobbles in it. So on row 13, we're going to start it out by working 3 single crochets. So 1, 2, and 3. We're going to work a bobble. And then we're going to we're going to do 11 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Now we're going to work a bobble stitch. And after you've completed that bobble stitch, you began with 3 single crochets, you're going to end with 3. So 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, and this is what we have so far. So for row 14, you are going to work single crochets across. So I'm going to let you pause the video, work those single crochets across row 14. When you get to the end, chain 1, turn your work, and we'll begin row 15 together. When you've completed your row 14 of single crochets, this is what your project is looking like. Your heart is coming together. You're going to chain 1, turn your work, and now we're ready to begin row 15, which will also contain bobble stitches. And we're going to start by working a single crochet into the first 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to work a bobble stitch. This bobble stitch will fall directly on top of the one you made 2 rows ago, on the last row containing bobble stitches. So if you turn your work, you'll see that they're lining up right on top of each other. We're now going to work 5 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're going to work another bobble stitch. And we're going back across, so we want to keep everything even. So we're going to work 5 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're going to work a bobble stitch in the next stitch, and this one's going to be worked directly above the 2 rows previous, or the last row of bobble stitches. And if you turn your work, you can see that those are lining up on top of each other. And so then in the last 3 remaining stitches, we are going to single crochet to keep it symmetrical with the other side. And this is going to complete row 15, chain 1, turn your work. For row 16, we're going to work single crochets all the way across. So go ahead and pause the video, work your single crochets, chain 1, turn your work, and I will join you for row 17, which will be the last row of bobble stitches. When you've completed row 16, this is what your block will look like. Chain 1, turn your work. We're going to work row 17 together. This is your last row of bobble stitches. So we're going to start this row by working 5 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You're now going to work a bobble stitch in the next stitch. And then you're going to work 1 single crochet. And now you're going to do another bobble stitch. Now you're going to work 3 single crochets. 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to complete what we've done over here. We're going to work a bobble stitch, chain 1, bobble stitch, and not chain 1, excuse me, bobble stitch, 1 single crochet, bobble stitch, and 5 single crochets. So in this next stitch, we're going to work a bobble stitch. We're going to work a single crochet. We're going to work a bobble stitch into the next stitch. And a single crochet into the remaining 5 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Chain 1 and turn your work. Here's your heart actually completely completed. Now, just like we did down here, we're going to do 6 rows of single crochet. So I want you to go ahead and work your 6 rows of single crochets. When you get to the end of each row, don't forget to chain 1 before turning your work. When you get to the end of your 6th row of single crochets, do not fasten off your work, and I will meet back up with you. And do not chain 1 at the end. So just work the last single crochet of row 6, and I will meet back up with you there. When you've finished all 6 rows of your single crochets, that will take you through row 23. So this is our little square with our bobble heart pattern. Now we need to turn this into a granny square so that it will match the other squares that we plan on making. We will end up adding a total of 3 rows of border around this little piece that we have here to make it into the granny square that we need it to be. So we're going to go ahead. This is where we finished off the end of our 23rd row. So we have not chained 1. You want to turn your work, and we are going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've been doing single crochets, but from here on out we're going to work double crochets. So in this same stitch here that you made your last single crochet in, that you just did a chain 5 in, you're going to go right back into it and work a double crochet. And it's going to give you kind of like a little corner loop like this. Chain 1. You're going to skip this next single crochet, and into this next one you're going to work a double crochet. So it gives you a space like this. So counting this corner space and counting this one, you have 2 spaces. You want to have 11 spaces going across the top of this piece. So let's do that again. Let's chain 1. We're going to skip a single crochet and work a double crochet into the next. And that gives us 3 spaces. Chain 1, skip a single crochet and work a double crochet into the next. And this will give you 4 spaces. And let's just continue doing that across. And that gives us 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and when we go into this last single crochet, whoops, might help if I worked a double crochet into it instead of a single crochet. That gives us 10, but if you'll remember, I said we needed 11. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But we're going to mimic this corner. So this counts as our first double crochet, okay, which is this one right here. So we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and go right back into that stitch and work a double crochet. When we do that, we now have 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. We're going to turn our work. We're going to chain 1. We're going to skip this next stitch right here, and we're going to go into this one, and we're going to work a double crochet. And we're going to do down this side just what we did on the first side, but on this side, instead of having 11 spaces, we need to have 13. So far, and even though we counted this one as our 11, it's going to count as 1 going down the side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and when we go into this last single crochet, that makes 12, and then we're going to chain 2 and work a double crochet back into that stitch, and that makes 13. Now I do want to show you something. When you go to make this last stitch, if you'll notice, I actually have 1, 2. I skipped that extra stitch and went straight into that corner stitch so that I could keep this symmetrically even for how I was going to need it to be able to match up with the other squares. So just right there, I went into this chain. This is our foundation chain down here. Okay? And so let's just count, make sure. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So now we're going to turn our work, and we want to do the same thing across here. We want to have 11, and we're going to do the same thing across here, and we want to have 13. So we're going to chain 1, and we're going to skip the next stitch, go into the next one and work a double crochet. And if we're counting our corner, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9, and going into this corner stitch here makes 10, chain 2, 1, 2, and work a double crochet right back into that same stitch, and that gives you 11. And let's just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. As you can see, my project is starting to curl up a little bit, but don't worry about that. When we go to add the other stitches, it will actually lay out flat. So we're going to chain 1, and now we're going to come back up this side, and again, remember we want 13. So we've got this corner stitch that counts as 1. You can either work your tail in, your foundation tail in as you go, or you can go back and weave it in later. I'm going to weave mine in later, and I will show you why when we get to that point. All right, so after I've chained 1, I'm going to skip this next stitch and come into this next one. That gives me 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and now we're back to the beginning. So we're not going to go into this base of the stitch here. We're going to count up 3 chains of our chain 5, 1, 2, 3, and in the top of that third one, we are going to slip stitch to join. That creates 12 and 13, but let's just count to make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and our corner here makes 13. Okay? We need to get back into this center, the space, the chain 2 space of our corner here. So in order to do that, we're going to slip stitch into that chain 2 space. And now we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. This is starting the second round of our border. That chain 3 is going to count as a double crochet. We're going to work another double crochet into that chain 2 space, and that gives us 2 double crochets. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and now we're going to work 2 more double crochets into that chain 2 space, so that we have a total of 4 double crochets and 2 chain spaced out like that to create a corner. So 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets all into that corner space. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2, continuing to work with double crochets. We're going to skip this space, and into the next space we're going to work 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, and 3. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2, skip this next space, and into the next one, work 3 double crochets. So 1 and 2 and 3. And we're going to continue doing that across this row. So we're going to chain 2. We're going to skip the next space, and into the next one, we're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2. Skip the next space, and into the next space, work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to chain 2. 1, 2. And now we're going to skip this space, and that brings us to that corner space. We're going to work 2 double crochets, chain 2, and work 2 double crochets all in that one space. So there's our 2 double crochets, chain 2, go right back into the space and work 2 double crochets. And that creates that corner. And see how it's lining up? We're going to chain 2 and turn to this next side, and we're going to work down this side doing the exact same thing. We're going to skip this space, and we're going to come into the next one and work 3 double crochets. So we've got 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to chain 2, 1, 2. We're going to skip this space, and into the next one, we're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to chain 2, 1, 2. And we're going to skip this space, and into the next one, we're going to work 3 double crochets. So we have 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, skip this space, and into this next one, we're going to work 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, skip this space, and into the next, we're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to chain 2, and we're going to skip this space, and now it brings us to this corner space, and we're going to work our 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets into that corner to match the other corner. So there's 2 double crochets, and chain 2, and work 2 double crochets into this corner. And then this brings us to the very last side for this second round. And we're going to chain 2. And we're going to skip this space, and into this next space, we're going to work our 3 double crochets. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to chain 2, 1, 2. And we're going to skip this space, and into the next space, work 3 double crochets. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to chain 2, skip this space, and work 3 double crochets into the next. So we have 1, 2, and 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip this next space, and into this next space, we're going to work 3 double crochets. So we have 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, and now we're going to skip this space, and here we are at this corner, and I apologize, I thought we had already done 3 sides and we had not. So we just completed our 3rd side. We're getting ready to go into our 4th side. So here we are at the corner. So after you skip this space, you're going to work 2 double crochets, chain 2, and work 2 more double crochets. So 1, 2 double crochets, chain 2, and now we're going to work 2 more double crochets into that corner chain 2 space. And now we're going to chain 2 and turn our work to work the last side. So we're going to skip this space and we're going to come right into this next one, and we're going to work 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, and 3. We're going to chain 2 and we're going to skip this next space, and in this next space we're going to work 3 double crochets, and we've got 1, 2, and 3. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2. We're going to skip this space and work 3 double crochets into the next space. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2. Skip this next space and work 3 double crochets into the next. So 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2. Skip this space, and in this next one we're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, and we're going to skip this space, and as you can see, coming into the next one is where we already have our corner stitch of 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. So we're going to go to this first double crochet where we chain 3. We're going to go to the top of the 3rd chain, so 1, 2, 3. We are going to slip stitch into that 3rd chain, and now we want to get back to this corner chain 2 space, so we're going to slip stitch into this next double crochet, and then we're going to slip stitch into this chain 2 space, and that gets us working into the top of that chain 2 space. But before we do, let me show you what we have. This is our square. So now we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. This is going to count as a double crochet. We're going to go back into that chain 2 space and we're going to work a double crochet. We now have 2 double crochets. We're going to chain 2, and now we're going to work 2 double crochets right back into that same chain 2 space, just like we have been on the previous rounds. And that will be the last corner that will work on this square in this corner. Okay? We're going to chain 2. And last round we were skipping a block and working 3 double crochets into the next. This time we're going to skip the 3 double crochets and we're going to work 3 double crochets into the space, the block. Okay, so there's 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, and we're going to skip this block of 3 double crochets and go into this chain 2 space here, and we're going to work 3 double crochets in it. 1, 2, and 3. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2. We're going to skip these 3 double crochets and into this next chain 2 space, we're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to chain 2, 1, 2. We're going to skip these 3 double crochets, and into this next chain 2 space, we're going to work 3 double crochets. So we have 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to chain 2, 1, 2. And we're going to skip these next 3 double crochets, and we're going to go into the next chain 2 space and work 3 double crochets. We've got 1, 2, and 3. We're going to chain 2, and now we're to the next corner. We are going to skip over these 2 double crochets here. We're going to go into this chain 2 space, and we're going to work our 2 double crochets, chain 2, and work 2 double crochets all in that same chain 2 space. So there's our first 2 double crochets, our chain 2, and now we're going to work our last 2 double crochets in that space. And then we're going to continue repeating the same thing around. We're going to chain 2, skip these 2 double crochets, and in this next chain 2 space, we will work 3 double crochets. And then we're going to chain 2. We'll skip these next 3 double crochets, and in the next chain 2 space, we're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, 1, 2. So I want you to continue working around this square. After you've chained 2, you're going to skip your 3 double crochets, and in the next chain 2 space, you'll work 3 double crochets, chain 2, skip the next 3 double crochets, and work 3 double crochets into the next chain 2 space, and so forth till you come to the corner. In the corner, after you've chained 2, you'll skip the 2 double crochets, and in that chain 2 space, you'll work 2 double crochets, chain 2, work 2 double crochets, then you'll chain 2 again, skip these 2 double crochets, and into this next chain 2 space, work 3 double crochets, skip the 3 double crochets, and in the next chain 2 space, work 3 double crochets, and so forth all the way around. When you get back to the beginning of this round and you've worked your last 3 double crochets into this last chain 2 space, I will meet up with you and show you how to finish off this granny square. We have worked our last 3 double crochets into our last chain 2 space. We're back at the beginning, so we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then we're going to slip stitch into the top of the 3rd chain of this chain 3 that we did to create this first double crochet, and do a slip stitch to join. And that completes our granny square. So to fasten off, we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to cut a little bit of a yarn tail for weaving in, and we're going to pull that through and just tighten it down. And then just to look real quick, this is our completed granny square. And now we just need to weave our ends in, and since this is kind of a lacy granny square, I'm going to show you just in case I've got some beginners with me that I can show you how to do this. This is how I like to do mine. I always like to come into the top of one of the neck stitches and pull that through so that it blends in very nicely with the work, and you can't really tell that it's there. And then I'm going to come into this double crochet here, and I'm just going to weave my needle in and out through those stitches, and then pull my yarn through like that, so that so far my tail, that's actually from that chain, so that my yarn disappears into that double crochet. Now you don't want to pull it too tight, because if you do, see how it changes the shape? So just kind of stretch that back out. And then I'm going to come right here into this kind of little scallop, so to speak, that we've created. And I'm going to weave my needle in underneath those stitches and pull my yarn through there. Again, you don't want to pull too tight because you don't want to change the shape. And then I'm going to skip over this first loop here, and I'm going to go back through them and pull my yarn through. And then I'm going to do it one more time to secure. So I'm going to go over that top one and then come back through and pull it. And there you go. I'm going to trim off the excess, and voila. So now, if you remember, on the back side, we still have our foundation tail. Because I chose to not weave it in as we went, I wanted to wait and do it now. So I'm going to do the same concept. We've got kind of like this little scallop border going on. I'm going to skip over this top loop right here, the first one that's near my yarn, and I'm going to wiggle my needle up under the rest of those stitches and pull my yarn through. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come over the top of this first one and then go back under the rest of them. And I'm going to do that one more time. You really only have to do this once or twice, but I always do it a couple times just because I want to just make sure that it is securely in there. And then I like to kind of stretch out that stitch again just to make sure that I haven't changed the shape, and then cut off the excess. And there you go. No more tails. And you have your completed heart granny square. Well, this has been Funday Monday, part 1 of the Call the Midwife Blocks of Love baby blanket. And until next time, be joyful, stay crafty in your own way, make your own joyful creations, and I will see you next week for part 2. Bye, everyone.